Hey guys, how's it going? It is Travis Sports with the Forest Hill Film Lab. Today I wanted to talk to you guys about something that basically inspires me personally, and that is not necessarily old photographers or the greats or whatever. It's not so much their work that inspires me, it's actually their words that inspire me the most. So today I'm going to be doing a video kind of about photo quotes and just kind of explaining to you why reading old photo quotes and doing the research on our history and our historical photographers, it's actually a great way to get motivated for your own work. And for me personally, it's one of the things that motivates me more than anything else. A conversation with a friend or some technique I see online are all great things to inspire me, but ultimately in the end, it's reading through books and finding places where I could relate to a famous photographer's journey. Reading things that Dorothea Lange has said or Ansel Adams has said that relate directly to me is like extremely huge inspiration, because it makes me feel like they've also been in my shoes and that my photographic journey is not all that much different from theirs was, So basically I'm going to talk to you guys about some of these quotes. I was going to kind of include quotes from the internet that I liked a lot, but I just didn't feel like that was so impacting. And these specific books here are very personal books from the photographers, and they have a lot of quotes that you will never find online. So I'm going to kind of just get into these books. I'm going to try not to read a whole lot because, quite honestly, like everything in these books excites me, so it's kind of hard for me to pick out what's really exciting to you guys just because it's getting me stoked. But yeah, I'm going to talk about some of these books with you guys, but mostly about the quotes that these photographers made and how you could use them to inspire your own work. Alright, so before we get started and dive into these books, I want to talk a little bit about why photographer quotes get me stoked. If you go through my Instagram, you'll notice that on a lot of my images, instead of a caption or something, I'll just put a quote from an old photographer. And the reason for that is because it's my example of there's quotes out there from photographers that will almost always relate to the work that you're doing. What that quote may be, I don't know, but it's kind of fun to have something to start out with. So sometimes I'll start out with a photo of something. It could be a photo of motion. It could be a photo of my children. It could be a photo of my friends. And I'll go on to this website called photoquotes.com, and basically this is a database of every photographer that's ever been relevant and every person who's ever said anything about photography. These quotes that end up on this website, and you could search in the keyword bar. So I'll type in there motion, and I'll just try to find what people have said about motion, or what photographers have said about portraiture, or what photographers have said about getting in a rut, or needing motivation. You could type in all these keywords and I find specific quotes for them. And in doing this, you get to learn more about these classic photographers. You get to a real view inside their head, and you get to understand what it was that they loved about photography. Because for me, photography is absolutely my whole entire life, and for other people it's not, and that's totally cool. But for me, it's everything. It's all I think about. It's like daily I do something having to do with photography. And so I know that my lifestyle and my passion for this is no different than Ansel Adams or Dorothea Lange's passion for it. And that is what excites me. Sure, my skill level and my accolades and all those things don't line up, but my passion for the craft is absolutely there. So when I read their quotes, I feel connected to them. I feel like if I read a quote from Dorothea Lange that I agree with, I'm like, oh my God, like I feel the way Dorothea Lange feels about this particular subject. So here we go. I grabbed 3 books that I had in my library that were more personal books from photographers that would contain more quotes. Because your book of Ansel Adams photographs doesn't really have any part of his philosophy involved. It's just his photos. So I'm going to show you guys the first book. This book is called The Day Books of Edward Weston. And let me read you the beginning part of the foreword here, so you could just kind of get a grasp on how crazy this is. And look, at the first page has a handwritten letter. And I mean, it's so hard to read, so I'd have to take a minute to read it. But here we go. The first thing it says is, seldom has an artist written about his life as vividly, as intimately, and as sincerely as Edward Weston. Day after day for more than 15 years, this great photographer wrote his thoughts about life, outlined his hopes, cataloged his despairs, mercilessly criticized his photographs, and recorded every experience which was meaningful to him. And so, holy shit, that means that for 15 years this guy wrote his thoughts down. So, I mean, Edward Weston is one of the greatest photographers that we've ever had. And this book here is just one book that has probably been long forgotten. You know, no one's ever talking about the daybooks of Edward Weston. But when you open this book, what you have is an absolute, you know, an absolute look into his mind. Completely, you know, vulnerable. He didn't write these daybooks thinking they'd ever be published. And actually, when they proposed that they were going to be published for him, he started going through the books and cutting out things that he didn't like, cutting out criticisms. He even didn't like the fact that he complained so much in his books about how uncomfortable he was and things like that. He was very, very self-conscious about what he talked about and what he revealed. So, I'm actually only going to read one bit of this because most of it's very personal stuff that doesn't necessarily fall into my you know, my photography. It doesn't, not necessarily something I can relate to. It's obviously interesting in its own right, though. But I just want to read to you. This one's titled Boy and Camera. This was from a pre-1923 daybook. And Edward Weston was born in 1885, so he would have been in his 20s or 30s when this was probably written. And this is basically him talking about getting his first camera. I mean, when would we ever figure out how he felt about this unless we read his words? So, denying myself every luxury, indeed many comforts too, until with $11 in my pocket I rushed to town, purchasing a second-hand 5x7 camera with a ground glass and tripod. And then what joy! I needed no friends now. I was always alone with my love, school was neglected, I played hooky whenever possible. Zero weather found me wandering through snowdrifts, seeking the elusive patterns in black and white which covered the ground. Or the sunsets over prairie wastes. Sundays, excuse me, that was a period there. Sundays, my camera and I would take long car rides into the country around Chicago, always alone. And nights we spent feverishly developing my plates in some makeshift darkroom. Now, this is my absolute favorite part of this quote. It's not even a quote. This is just a journal entry that was very much him writing his absolute feelings. And, wow, I'm going to just read it. Then the first print I made from my first 5x7 negative. A snow scene. The tightening, choking sensation in my throat. The blinding tears in my eyes when I realized that a picture had really been conceived. I could see every line of the composition yet, and it was not half bad. And then he said, how I danced for joy into my father's office with this initial effort. I can only wish I had kept the print at least for memory's sake, and not destroyed it with many others in some moment of dissatisfaction. So, wow, that's amazing. Like, he's explaining the first time he realized he actually made an image in the darkroom, and the feeling he got was a choking sensation. It brought tears to his eyes to actually have made an image for the first time. That's fucking amazing. That is amazing. That is amazing that we get to hear Edward Weston speak so candidly about that first time. And you never could do it twice. You never get your first photo back. That's the realest sensation. And then I'm going to read to you guys the end of this because it's also very important to me. Let me see. Last year I talked before the University of California on photography, and part of my paper, it seems, may well be added right here. So he's going to talk to you guys about photography. This is in quotes now, from his paper from the University of California. I come to you as a photographer, a craftsman, I hope. My education was not from the public schools where I dreamed my hours away, but from my camera. Before it came into my life, I had drifted along mechanically, passing from grade to grade, by fair or unfair means, watching the clock for recess or noon hours or vacation time, taking home books for study and returning them still unstrapped the next morning. But suddenly, my whole life changed. Because I became interested in something definite, concrete. Immediately my senses of sight and touch were developed, my imagination keyed up to a high pitch, because at last, after years wasted, accidentally enough, it is sad to relate, I became interested And then that was the end of it. I became interested in life. He said that his camera was basically what gave him life. Up until he found the camera, he was just muddling along day to day, mundanely. And then once he found the camera, it gave him sight. It gave him touch. He was able to experience life. He became interested, and that's how he ended that. That's amazing, and that's all I really wanted. That's all I really needed to read from this book, because Edward Weston was so influential. To just hear how he felt about his first photograph and photography as a whole is motivating for me. It just makes me want to go out and do that, because if this person can feel so passionately about it, and I feel so passionately about it, then it would almost be a disservice to him to not go full on, full bore, and really attack photography with all I have. We're going to move on to the next book. As you guys know, Dorothea Lange is a huge inspiration of mine. For those who haven't heard the story, I'll make it short, but a few years ago I met a man who was actually Dorothea Lange's assistant in helping her choose all of the photos for her last photographic exhibition in New York. So this man I met actually knew Dorothea Lange, and because of that, it like sparked this fire inside me and this passion for her work and for her career that I could only hope to replicate in my own way. So Dorothea Lange was such an amazing photographer, and her theory on photography is one that I share. You know, it's essential to life, if you will. So I wanted to read some of the stuff out of this book. It seems all of my bookmarks have got misplaced, but let me see here. Oh, here we go. This is why I've bookmarked this one. So here it is. Dorothea, in 1964, Dorothea was diagnosed with the incurable cancer of the esophagus. She decided to use her last months to put together a retrospective of her whole entire life's work at the Museum of Modern Art, and to let a television crew film her working on the show. That television crew that filmed her working on the show, they filmed my buddy Richard Conrad, and he's also in the videos, which is amazing to me. And so there was a sudden shift in the mood at Paul and Dorothea's house. Carefully, Dorothea used her last resources to choose the prints for the show. She drank cup after cup of tea and ate tiny bowls of polenta and ice cream. So she, now she's realized she's gonna die, and the last bit of her life, she's gonna still use her last time for her craft. Her photography is absolutely the most important thing to her. Time's running out. It's time to do this last thing before I have no time left. And she said, while she searched for the prints, she said, "In this show, I would like to be speaking to others in the sound of my own voice. Poor though it may be, not other people's voices. I don't care how wide I lay myself open this time." So she wanted to just completely show you everything that she had to say in her own words. Here's my life's work. I don't care if it all goes together. I don't care if it's all relevant with one another. This is everything. This is my voice. A few weeks after choosing the final photographs for her show, Dorothea died. Paul, who was her husband, in an effort to console us, himself inconsolable, wrote down her very last words. So this is Dorothea Lange's last words before she died. "Isn't it a miracle," she said, "that it comes at the right time?" In the final moment, after a lifetime of striving, Dorothea met her own death and surrendered graciously. And so, wow, I mean, that's basically what she was saying. Isn't it amazing that it comes at the right time, because she had finished her project. She finished her collecting of work, and now she could die. Now she could peacefully surrender to death. She was completely okay with it because it was at the perfect time. She got it done. And so here's some photos of Dorothea Lange in her home before her death. And these are, searching through her works, looking at the wall of images to see what works best with one another. And then here we go. This is just a little quote on the first part of the next chapter I wanted to read. This is from Dorothea Lange. And one of the reasons Dorothea is so inspiring to me is because the world of photography is full of men. And because of that, I feel it's a bit daunting. I'm a man. I'm just one of many. There's millions of us out there. Because of the mechanics of photography, I think it appeals to men. I think it appeals to men for whatever reason. But because of that, Dorothea Lange stood out as a female. She stood out as a female photographer. And for some reason, I feel like people always mention that about her, even though it had nothing to do with her work. I mean, her work was excellent, male or female. So because of this, here's a quote. "We need to be reminded these days about what women have been and can be. It's a question of their place in society, the really deep and fundamental place in society." Dorothea, she was most known for her work, exposing people in despair, showing people that were, living less than we were. And so her work as a woman was huge. I mean, she made a huge impact as a woman in photography. Let's see what else I wrote, or what did I came to California in 1918. This is the part of the book that relates with me the most. So here we go. I came to California in 1918. I was a portrait photographer in San Francisco. I struggled hard with it, and some of my longest, hardest working years were those years, up to the limit of my strength. It was quite a venture because it was a rather expensive place, and I had what they called the cream of the trade. Her studio was the best in the city. Her studio was where everybody went, the richest people. Her studio was where you went to get your photo taken. And because of that, it actually created a huge weight on her shoulders that she was getting tired of carrying. She's doing such a great job, and it's so successful that it's almost too much for her. And so here we go. I enjoyed every portrait I made in an individual way, but it wasn't what I really wanted to do. I wanted to work on a broader basis. I realized I was photographing only people who paid me for it, and that bothered me. This is exactly how I personally feel about photography. For the longest time, I got a digital camera, and I was told by photography, by my peers, that to be a successful photographer, you got to make money doing it. You got to make money in this business if you're going to go anywhere, right? But that's not so. I mean, the passion for photography is what you need. That's what's really important. And I really think that it's a shame that the amount of money you earn as a photographer is what dictates your skill and ability as a photographer. Dorothea said it here. She was doing great. She enjoyed every portrait she made. But she was only photographing people that paid her for it, and that bothered her. And that would bother me too, because when you're only photographing people who pay you for it, you're never making your own photographs. You're making their photographs. And for me, this is why I chose to do what I do. I chose to sell my digital cameras and shoot only film and do all of this stuff because the passion for photography is what gets me motivated. So yeah, this is just talking more about her life, but that part right there is that she realized she was only photographing people who paid her for it, and that was about it for her. She started photographing the White Angel bread line after that, is when she shot that photo, and her life took a whole nother turn. Let's see, I'm going to read you guys a little bit more out of here. When we came back to San Francisco, we were confronted immediately with the terrors of the Depression. Everyone was so shocked and panicky, no one knew what was ahead. I was compelled to photograph as a direct response to what was around me. I went out just absolutely in the blind staggers. I was gathering my forces, and that took a little bit because I wasn't accustomed to jostling around in groups of tormented, depressed, and angry men with a camera. Paul Taylor, who was a professor at the University of California, telephoned me. He had a grant from the state of California to investigate agricultural labor, and he wanted photographs as visual evidence to accompany it. Well, a way would have to be found, and a way was found. My papers were made out as a typist because they just roar back if you mention photographer. But that was the way I got started. I worked for the California State Emergency Relief Administration, and the next thing I knew, I was married to Paul Taylor. So, I mean, her work started as a professional photographer. That's what she knew. That's what she thought was right. She started her studio. She became successful. But what we know Dorothea for most is her work after that. What we know Dorothea for most is her work in the fields, her work with Paul Taylor, her work at Manzanar, her work on the streets of San Francisco. So what that tells me is that the moment she stopped thinking of photography monetarily, the moment she stopped thinking of photography as a career, the moment she started shooting what she felt was right and what she wanted to photograph, is when she became successful. And for me, that is the most inspiring thing ever, because that's what I'm doing. That's what you guys are probably doing as well. A lot of us are doing that. And so all this work led one thing to the other. Here we have the migrant mother, of course. And, you know, her photographic career started the minute it stopped. The minute she stopped in the studio is when it all began for her. And I feel the same way about myself. Like I said, the moment I sold my digital camera and started doing something different that I loved and cared about is the moment I started getting that recognition and, you know, that feeling inside myself that I wanted, that satisfaction. And the last book, which is the coolest book I've found all year. This might even be my favorite book in my whole entire library. This is Ansel Adams, Letters and Images. These are like real letters that he wrote to people, completely candid. Ansel Adams talking to his loved ones, family members, and friends. So we're going to go through this and look at some of this stuff. This last book is called Ansel Adams, Letters and Images from 1916 to 1984. Now, Ansel Adams was born in 1902, so the fact that it says 1916 is a little bit funny. Why is it that? So we're going to get going. We're going to start this out. In 1916, Ansel Adams was 14 years old, and he traveled to Yosemite for the first time to photograph. Quite literally, he's been doing it his whole life. You know, he was a photographer his whole life. It took decades for him to get noticed, though. I mean, Ansel Adams was a 14-year-old in Yosemite. That was about it. Like, he wasn't Ansel Adams in Yosemite, 14-year-old kid in Yosemite, like, just a hobbyist, if you will. And in this first page here, we have this handwritten letter to his Aunt Mary, which was his father's sister, I believe. And it says, and this was in 1916, this is his first letter now. This is the first letter of the book, 14-year-old Ansel Adams. So, I mean, think of yourself as 14 years old. He's basically, like, away from home. Everyone's back in San Francisco, and he's like, holy shit, I'm away from home for the first time, writing a letter back home. Like, this is crazy, you know, updating the family. Dear Aunt Mary, I am sending you 2 pictures of Yosemite Valley that I have taken. Films are expensive to develop, and I expect to be broke if I keep at the rate I am taking pictures. I have taken 30 already. Yesterday, I went up to Sierra Point and enjoyed lying on my chest and looking over the edge about 1,500 feet down, perpendicular. I mean, look at that. Just this letter here tells me where he's at. He's shot 30 already, and he's saying if I don't slow down, I'm going to run out of film. So that kind of gives you an idea as, you know, the value of your photographs is what you put in them. This guy, Ansel Adams, is like, I've already taken 30, and I bet you those 30 were excellent. Or maybe not. I mean, he was 14 years old. He was probably shooting some old shitty camera, realistically. 1916. So here we go. This is another you know, part. So June 23rd is when, June 23rd, 1916 was his first visit to Yosemite. Now it's summer 1917, the next year, and he's out there again. And this is just, this letter is basically a true testament to his passion for the craft. I would have written sooner, but I have not had the time. I've walked 175 miles to date and feel fine. I'm sending you a picture of the Mount Clark Range taken from Clouds Rest Trail. I can't seem to get as good finishing done here as in the city. The developing is alright, but the printing and enlarging are frightful. I have quite a large number of negatives, and most of them are good. I'm going to print them as soon as I get home. I went to Glacier Point yesterday for the 2nd time, and I hope I got some good photographs. It took enough trouble lugging that camera 12 or 13 miles to get up anything. Oh, to get anything, excuse me. But I suppose I loaded the plates upside down or something? I carried it up to the North Dome and found I had no plates left. I had a nice 20-mile hike anyway. That $5 you gave me helped me out a great deal, and almost all went for swimming. Tell Pa I'm going to write him soon and send him some of my pictures. Hoping you are well, expecting to hear from you soon. So, I mean, that part's really awesome because it explains in this letter, and now we get a little bit of insight. He said the developing and printing, the printing and enlarging are frightful. The developing is all right. So at this time, Ansel Adams is still an amateur photographer, having someone else develop his film for him. He hasn't even learned the rudimentary basics of developing his own film. Because back then, you weren't having someone else develop it for convenience. You were having someone else develop it because you just simply didn't know how. You don't want to pay anybody to do anything when $5 helped him out a great deal. You would rather do it yourself. But at this point, Ansel Adams is still a young photographer, and that's what excites me about this book, is we forget that. We forget that Ansel Adams once knew nothing. And these letters are telling us that. These letters are saying, hey, I loaded some plates upside down. The photo finishing here is okay, but the printing's horrible. He's not doing everything yet. And that's what excites me about that. That's really, really cool because it gives you that motivation to realize, like, wow, Ansel Adams started out as a 14-year-old kid who knew nothing. And now, you know, he's doing the work, but he's still only doing it for the love of it. No one's sending him to Yosemite to shoot photos for money. He's not doing it for money. He's doing it for himself. Let's see here. Oh, I thought this was really awesome. This was a telegram that he sent to his dad. So, I mean, a telegram was like, I need you to get this message right now. He basically sent his dad a text message. This was in April 1920. So Ansel Adams is 18 years old. So, you know, of course, he's still like, needs some help from home. You know, send me $5 so I can go swimming. And in all caps, he sends a telegram. Can buy burro for 20 including outfit. Can sell at end of season for 10. Find investment and useful. Wire immediately as offer is for today only. Ansel. So, I mean, that's just so cool. You know, it's Ansel asking his parents for some help. He has been carrying his camera 12 or 13 miles, and now someone's got a $20 burro. And he's like, Dad, send me some money. I need this burro so I can carry my shit around. I found that thing I was looking for. So it was actually also in the first page, and this was a letter to Alfred Stieglitz, who was like the boss of photography at the time. Like, if Stieglitz says you're doing a good job, then you're fucking doing a good job. And it's the verbiage in this letter that really, really speaks to me. And what it is it's true photography. And he says, he's basically talking about where he's at. He's in New Mexico. And this was in 1937. So this is now 20 years later. He's a very experienced photographer. And he's out in the desert with Georgia O'Keeffe. And he says, it's all very beautiful and magical here, a quality which cannot be described. You have to live it and breathe it, let the sun bake it into you. Basically talking about the landscape. This is the part I like. I think I am getting some very good things. Quite different, I believe. I like to think of my present stuff as more subtle, more uplifting. Oh, excuse me. More subtle, more lifting up the lid, if you know what I mean. I did some new things in the Owens Valley in California that I want you to see. I hope I will have things from here that I would want you to see too. So, that's exactly it. He's talking about, his photographs are only hope and maybe and I think and I believe, because still that photography still had that sense of mystery. Even Ansel Adams 20 years later was not confident that everything would be excellent until he developed it and saw it himself. And so he's even writing to Stieglitz with no certainty, no cockiness about him. He's saying, I hope that these things turn out. I believe I'm doing a great job. I hope I have some things to show you from here. But he doesn't know. He's not promising anything. He's not guaranteed to get good images. He's just, you know, talking about photography as organically as it truly is. And then I'm going to end this video out pretty quickly because it's been a long one. But this was a letter written to his soon-to-be wife. It was before they were married. And he said, there's a little more than a fortnight separating us. And in this letter, for some reason, he decided to go into great depth about his own photography and what he felt about it. And he said, you know, I'm getting established. I won't go into small details now, for I shall see you so soon. But it is a beginning and brings us closer to the happy day. He's trying to make money for their wedding. I will continue my photographic work as a means of incidental income until I find my music is filling my time. Thereafter, the photography will become a hobby only. I cannot let anything interfere with my music, which is my life work. I have definitely made my mind up about photography. So he's now decided, again, just like Dorothea, he wants photography to be his. He doesn't want to do it for work. He doesn't want to do it for money. He said, I'll do it a little bit longer, but once I start making money with music, I'm done. I am doing it as a hobby for me and for me only. And let me explain to you why. From now on, I will only do special work. That is, work of the highest quality that I am capable of. I want to establish a reputation for artistic work, and I have not the time to devote to lesser quality production. That means the finest of my negatives will be used without exception, that the finest materials I can get be put into my work, and that I will take the utmost care in the making of the prints, and that my photographs will always be purely photographic, not for coloring, not for reproduction in books, without proper remuneration, don't even know what that word means, and the understanding that the original quality be retained, I almost think I shall cancel all business of this kind and sell none for reproduction. I want my work to reach really high standards of art. If I can do such work as I hope to hereafter produce, I'm sure I will be able to take in quite a little revenue from the type of people who admire that kind of work. So now he's decided, I don't want to be everyday shooting all the shit photographer. I want to only shoot the best stuff, the best work. You're only going to see the most amazing photographs from me, and that will be my reputation. And damn it, he was right. That's exactly the reputation that he built for himself. This was in 1923. He was 21 years old. Ansel Adams decided when he was 21 years old that he was going to do nothing but the highest quality of work, and that's what he would be known for. And he lived his whole entire life with that premise. He absolutely executed his dream. He actually wasn't thought of as anything less than that. He was the master. He is the grandfather of photography. He is our Michael Jordan. So that part of the letter really like, it almost gave me butterflies, because this was just one letter that he wrote to his soon-to-be wife, who was then his muse for the rest of his life, Virginia. And I mean, this was early in his career, though. This was 10 years. He was actually shooting for 9 years. At this point in his photography, I've been shooting longer than Ansel. So Ansel Adams was a fresh young photographer, 9 years into it. Shit, during this time, Dorothea Lange had already had a studio for 10 years. Ansel Adams was nobody. Nobody knew who the hell he was. And he decided he was going to make nothing but the best work, and he was going to get known for it, and he absolutely did. And on the same note, I feel the same way about my own work. I hope I hope it happens to me in 60 years. I'm the next Ansel Adams, who knows? But he was here. He was exactly where I'm at, and somewhere along the lines, he was exactly where you guys are now. Same with Dorothea and Edward Weston. So to read these things, to see these quotes and read these excerpts, gives us a look into their life as amateur photographers, and gives us a little bit of motivation to get out there and maybe try to become one of the greats just like they were. They didn't know that. They didn't know they'd become one of the greats when they were writing these things. But anyways, this has been a long video, but I could probably make it an hour longer if you guys want to stay around, but I'll keep it short. So until next time, you guys, thank you so much for watching. Go check out some photo quotes, and keep on shooting.